So today I want to talk to you about an artist named Romero Britto. So let's try to say his name. I'm going to say it first and I want you to repeat it after me. Romero Britto. And let's try it all together. Romero Britto. Good job, guys. So Romero was born in Brazil, but as he grew up, he decided to move away from home, and now he currently lives in Miami, Florida. His artwork often makes people feel happy or feel feelings of love or hope or dreams. I really feel Romero gives his best effort because he is filled in his space. His work is nice and neat, and look how he's added details by adding patterns to those big empty areas.
All right, it's time to give Romero Britto's artwork a try for ourselves. So why don't you go find your paper and head back to your table to work. And I'll see you there to get started in just a second. All right, I've got a piece of paper out of the drawer like we usually do, and I want to make sure I write my name on it so everyone knows this artwork is mine. Then it's time to get started on the front side. I've chosen a heart as my pattern that I will trace, but there are other patterns that you can use too, such as a star or a peace sign. My mom taught me a saying, you want to draw light until you get it right. And so as you're drawing with a pencil here to start your project, keep that in mind. Don't press down really hard. Draw light until you're sure that what you've got on your paper is what you really want to keep. All right, so once you have your shape on your paper, then we want to start to divide that shape down into smaller shapes to make it easier to work on. And so we want to draw lines through our shape to divide the spaces. So I'm going to draw a line across like that, and then I've got 2 spaces. So I want to continue to divide my spaces. I want about 5 or 6 small spaces, so that way I have plenty of room to do my designs in, but not such a large space to have to fill in at one time. So if I divide my line here, then I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think just one more will just make that a little bit more manageable with 6 small spaces inside my heart. Now it's time to start thinking about the patterns that I want to use to fill in my heart with. You can use a certain shape repeated over and over, or you can think about patterns like what we've learned about in math, a repeating pattern. Maybe say a red stripe, blue stripe, red stripe, blue stripe. So just start thinking of different patterns and then filling them in. Remember, draw lightly until you're really sure that that is the kind of pattern that you want to fill it in, or that it's the way you want it to look. When you're doing this, you don't always have to have all of your design showing. If you watch here, I'm only making some of my circles show. Not all of them will appear. And so that way it looks like my pattern is going on even though I'm only showing a small section of it. Stars are always a nice pattern or a shape to use, and so you can do the stars, you could do hearts. Think about changing things in different sizes. That can make them more interesting too. I really like to do repeated designs, and so once I draw a line once, then I can kind of just trace below it again and repeat that same line just a little farther above or below, and it makes it really easy to repeat it over and over to fill up a space. It's really quick and easy to do. All right, we're almost there. We just have a few more. Hearts are always a good choice, like I said earlier, but think about varying the size. Think about turning some sideways or even upside down. It's just going to have the viewer's eye look around and really look at what's there and make it more interesting to look at. All right, and just this last little section, I think I'm going to make it kind of a fancy pattern. Some repeated shapes and some repeated stripes as well. All right, my next thing I'm going to want to do is I really want my heart to stand out. And so I want to clean up any lines that maybe I don't need now. And then my next step is going to be to use my markers. And I'm going to use a black marker to outline all of my design. This is really going to help make my design pop and stand out in the picture. So all of my shapes and my lines that I've drawn are really going to show up and be very noticeable in my design. All right, so I have finished up going over all of my lines, and now I like to use a big eraser to kind of clean up any pencil lines that might still be showing. This will make my picture look a little nicer and a little neater because I don't need those lines anymore. I have my marker lines now in place. So today you're going to see me using a new supply. I'm using color sticks. These are basically colored pencils, but without all the wood part around it, so you never have to sharpen them. They're really nice to use because you don't have to spend your time stopping and starting to color your picture. They're just good and bright colors ready to go right from the box. And so you just start coloring in your design. Some things to think about are using colors that go nice together. So colors that might be opposites on the color wheel. Red and green happen to be two colors that are opposites on the color wheel. That's why they look so great together at Christmas time. Purple and yellow are the same way. They're opposites and they always look fantastic together. So right here, I'm trying to do something really special with my blues. I want to make it look like water. And so I'm mixing three different blues to give the illusion. I color one color lightly, and then I mix it with a color that's beside it. And so I'm going to layer one color on top of the other when they're neighbors. And so it'll have one color where it's mixed, it'll have one color where it's by itself, and then I mix the other color that's coming up next on top. I do that over and over, and I have this mixture of all these different blue colors that just kind of flow together and look like moving water. Another way to think about contrast is using bright colors next to dark colors. You can use contrast in lots of different ways, and it always makes your picture look interesting. So contrast is showing things that are two different things side by side. So my small circles next to my big dots here, my bright colors next to my dark colors. All that can make a picture look a lot more interesting when you're working on those little details. So my camera decided to die. I guess I didn't have the battery charged all the way. So my battery is charged. We are back and it's time to finish what we started. And so there's just a few more areas that I need to color in and then we'll be ready for the next step. So let's keep on coloring and get this finished. All right, we're done and now we're on to the next part. So over on this other side of my paper, I have this big empty space and it's time to fill it with something. I want you guys to think of words that you feel when you look at your artwork right now, or how you feel when you look at Romero's artwork. I really think I feel love when I look at his stuff. So I'm going to write love in nice big letters. So I find it really easy to start with letters just like we usually write as a way to add fancy letters. Then I can go around my letters with extra lines and make it look more like bubble letters. But if I start with like a skeleton, it's easier sometimes than just drawing in all bubble letters from the start. This way all my letters are nice and neat and easy to read. So once you've got your letters outlined, make sure everything looks good, and then you can start to erase those skeleton lines that you don't need anymore. Just like we did before, we drew light till we got it right. And so hopefully that's a tip that sticks with you that you'll remember when you're working, because it makes it much easier to erase a light line than a line that is really dark. When you press down super hard, it is so hard to get that erase. But light lines just go right away and nobody knows that they were there. So I've grabbed a marker, and like my other parts of my picture, I want to outline all of my letters. This way they show up nice and bold like everything else. And then I don't want my letters to be too busy, so I'm not going to color them with a pattern. I think I'm just going to color them in solid, and so that's the next step. All right, so the last part of this is the background. If you know me, you know that I don't like big white empty spaces, and so it's time to add a little more color to our background. One technique I like to use is I like to color with the side of my crayon or color pencil. This gives a much different look than when I color with the end and color things to be nice and bold. It looks soft and cloud-like. And so once again, we have that contrast that we're looking for in things. But it also doesn't take away from all the hard work we've done everywhere else. If we colored everything bright and bold in the background, our patterns in our letters might not show up quite as good. So this technique really is a great way to fill in a solid area. As you can also see, it's going really fast. It doesn't take long using this technique to fill in a big empty white space. All right, so that does it. We are done with our background. Now, this is just one way that you can use this. Let's look at another picture I made using the same techniques I just showed you in the same process, but with a completely different result. Instead of just one big shape, I decided to use two, and they're not fully on the paper. Part of the stars go off the edges. And on this one, instead of colored pencils, I use markers. So it's the same process, but just a totally different look. And so since it was with stars, I felt hopeful when I looked at it. And so I changed my words as well as my shapes and my designs. Let's see what you guys come up with, because I know you are super creative.